Hello, and welcome to our review of issues that made the headlines in 2019. In January, the Royal College of Physicians announced it was polling its members for their stance on assisted suicide. Despite over 40% of respondents being opposed, the RCP changed its stance to neutral, a position supported by just 1 in 4. The decision is currently being challenged at the High Court. Also in January, politicians were told about the growing problem of global Christian persecution. At the parliamentary launch of the Open Doors World Watch List, MPs heard about the 245 million Christians suffering high levels of persecution. In February, a senior MP said Ofsted must do more to ease the concerns of faith communities. Robert Halfon challenged Ofsted leader Amanda Spielman at the Education Select Committee following concerns that the watchdog was delivering an anti-faith agenda. Later in the month, the government announced mandatory relationships education for primary-age children and relationships and sex education for secondary students. Relationships education will mean teaching young children about different types of relationships, which could include homosexuality, transgenderism, and same-sex marriage. In March, plans to ban smacking in Scotland received almost universal opposition in a public consultation. But in Scotland and in Wales, politicians pushed ahead with plans to criminalise parents. The Be Reasonable campaign, which is spearheading opposition, warned that parents who were accused of smacking could face suspension from their jobs. In the US, a case against a Christian baker who refused to make a cake celebrating a gender transition was dropped. Jack Phillips had been taken to court by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. In April, the Christian Institute wrote to rugby's national governing body questioning its impartiality. It followed former England player James Haskell, saying that taking an orthodox view of the Bible is a roadmap to killing people. He received no sanction from the Rugby Football Union, but another England international, Binny Vunipola, was disciplined for expressing Christian views on marriage. In May, the government revised draft guidance for independent schools, which had effectively banned disagreement with same-sex marriage. The Institute threatened court action, and the final guidance now allows schools to facilitate debate. Also in May, a woman who walked away from her lesbian relationship told the Christian Institute how God turned her life around. Sarah Sedgwick's full interview and stories from others who have left an LGBT lifestyle are on our website. In June, MPs gave their support to no-fault divorce. Under the proposals, a spouse who was being divorced against their will would have had no opportunity to contest the proceedings. We also brought you the news that researchers had used adult stem cells to develop a revolutionary heart treatment. By taking a sample of skin cells from the patient, scientists were able to incubate a pumping heart patch. In July, the Court of Appeal ruled that disagreement with same-sex marriage does not amount to discrimination. It was considering the case of social work student Felix Ngole, who was expelled from a university after he expressed biblical views online. The Court of Appeal criticised the university for attempting to limit free speech. July also saw Parliament back legislation to impose abortion and same-sex marriage on Northern Ireland. The Christian Institute's Callum Webster said, "It is tragic that parliamentarians from outside Northern Ireland have pushed this through." In a busy August, MPs said a loophole in the Sexual Offences Act, which allows sports coaches and religious leaders to have sexual relationships with young people, must be closed. August also saw the head of the UK's counter-terrorism strategy stand up for Christians. Neil Basu, a senior officer in the Metropolitan Police, said believers should be able to practice their faith openly. And a girl guiding leader began legal action over gender ideology. Katie Alcock had been expelled in 2018 for saying she believed boys could not become girls. In September, parents celebrated after the Scottish Government officially announced the end of the intrusive named person scheme. Deputy First Minister John Swinney announced he would scrap legislation underpinning the scheme 3 years on from our landmark Supreme Court victory against it. And in the USA, 2 Christians who faced being fined for declining to create same-sex wedding invitations won their case. After a long legal battle, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled in favour of Joanna Duca and Brianna Koski. In a busy October, MSPs voted to criminalise parents who smack their children. Despite public opposition and warnings of widespread investigation into families, MSPs voted by 84 to 29 in favour. October also saw a woman speak out after regretting changing sex. Charlie Evans said hundreds of young trans people had contacted her with similar concerns. A council-run sex education website for teenagers was taken offline following complaints the content was dangerous and degrading. And the government dropped promised safeguards restricting children's access to online pornography. The Institute called it a big victory for pornographers. In November, the Christian Institute warned the government that it will seek to take legal action if it does not protect churches and teachers in Northern Ireland who disagree with same-sex marriage. The Northern Ireland office said there would be a consultation on religious ceremonies for same-sex weddings, but would not consult more widely. Also in November, the government launched a consultation on a highly permissive abortion law in Northern Ireland. It proposed unrestricted abortion up to 12 or 14 weeks. And the High Court rejected another attempt to weaken the law on assisted suicide. Judges said the court is not an appropriate forum for the discussion of the sanctity of life. And in December, we revealed that a Christian street preacher was paid over £4,000 in a settlement with police. Dale McAlpine had been pursuing a claim for wrongful arrest with the support of the Christian Institute. And the Conservative Party won the general election, returning Boris Johnson to Downing Street. Thank you for standing with us this year. Your prayers and support are invaluable to our work. We give thanks to God and trust Him to provide for our every need in 2020.